Welcome to the Ideas podcast series funded by TU Rise. I'm Dr. Valerie McTaggart, a lecturer and researcher at Atlantic Technological University. RISE at ATU is co-funded by the Government of Ireland, European Union, Northern and Western Regional Assembly and the Higher Education Authority. Today I'm joined by Niall Murray, the Managing Director of Collins McNicholas, who are recruitment and HR services group. Good afternoon, Niall. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Valerie. Nice to be here.
Niall, so you've been working in HR and recruitment services for many years. Can you tell us about your journey into recruitment and what led you to Collins McNicholas?
I can indeed. So I'm a Sligo native and I went to Summerhill College here locally, did my Leaving Cert in 1992, and I had a vague idea I wanted to study business studies. So I ended up going to DCU to study business studies from 92, where as I went through that programme I specialised in HR, and as a part of our third year subjects, we had a subject on recruitment and we had a project to do. And one of the things I did as part of that project was ring about 3 or 4 recruitment companies, basically picked up the Sunday papers, the Sunday Tribune at the time, rang 3 or 4 recruitment companies just to understand how they operated as part of my project. I got a real interest in what they were doing. It sounded interesting. I liked the idea of working on behalf of a client and then a candidate to help find them a job. So when I finished my college degree there, I wrote out to about 20, as it was back then, pen and paper and envelopes and stamps, and sent out 20 applications, and was lucky enough to get a role in a small boutique recruitment firm in Dublin called the Recruitment Business, who were really at the niche interconnecting piece of the IFSC, which was just starting to grow in technology. So their sweet spot was kind of financial services and technology, which was really starting to grow in Dublin. And it was a really enjoyable. I spent 2 years there. They were a fantastic company. They were starting to get involved in, I was involved in developing their website, where we had to, very, very basic stuff, but we also were starting to put email addresses on our adverts that were going into the Irish Times every Friday. That was your key advertising sourcing pool, was the little lineage ads in the Irish Times every Friday. So we were starting to, which was a big innovation at the time, put an email address on the adverts in late 96 into 1997. So that's where I cut my teeth. Small boutique firm, really, really great training, really high standards. And from there, I moved back home to Sligo in 1998 to join Collins McNicholas and opened up an office in Cleaver, where the Cleaver Industrial Park is there. Hanson factory was there. So we took a small room in that. Shortly after starting, my colleague Antoinette O'Flaherty joined, and we can built the business from there. And back in 2015, myself, Antoinette and Michelle Murphy, another colleague, were lucky enough to get an opportunity to lead a management buyout and buy the business from Coleman Collins, who was one of the founders.
That was a very brave move to, go from and buy out the company at the time. And Collins McNicholas has grown substantially over the last number of years. So in your experience, because you've been at this for a very long time, you started in Dublin and obviously more recently in Sligo, how has the recruitment landscape changed in the last 5-10 years from your perspective?
Well, it's changed dramatically. If you take 10 years ago, in Ireland, unemployment we're still coming out of the kind of economic crash from 2008. I think unemployment was at about 10%. We had about 1.9 million people working. Today, unemployment is at 4% or just over it, which is technically full employment, with almost 2.8 million people working. So before you talk about the recruitment market, you have to look at the labour market, and that's been phenomenal growth in the past 10 years. Almost 800,000 people added to the workforce. And I would argue since probably about 2019, we've had pretty much close to full employment. It's been in 4%, 4.5%. And if you take out the blip, which was COVID, which was a very different kind of unemployment where people were heavily supported, we've had largely full employment since 2019. And that has put pressures on the labour market. It has meant that from 2015, it has turned towards a candidate market. Candidates, I should say, have lots of opportunities, lots of choices, and it has certainly meant that employers have to really focus on how they attract talent, how they promote their employer brand, and how they make themselves attractive to that niche skill sets that are looking. Now, it has probably the last 12 months with some of the uncertainty around tariffs, the labour market has possibly cooled a little bit, but if you look at the numbers, we're still almost at 2.8 million. Anybody who has any redundancies that have happened, and there's been some high profile redundancies, they're being absorbed in the labour market. So the labour market has stayed pretty robust so far.
And I love the way you say that, because I actually haven't heard that phrase. It's a candidate market, so it's an employees market. And in terms of employers getting the talent that they need at the moment, where do you think the biggest gaps are? Or is it right across the board? Or I suppose us as an educational provider, where is the skills gaps that need to be filled primarily?
Well, it's across the board, but if you look at some of the real growth sectors in the past 10 to 15 years, technology obviously across the board has been very, very strong. But the life sciences space, if you look at the growth of pharmaceuticals and biopharmaceuticals in this country, and even the broader life science, they've been very, very strong in terms of growth numbers. And I think the educational sector is doing very well in terms of producing science graduates and high quality science graduates. And also, we've done some work in the past with NIBRT, and again, it's a very impressive organisation in terms of retraining and giving people skills to retrain into the biopharma sector. So I think we're doing okay. Obviously, you could still do with more high quality graduates and certainly PhDs. There's always a demand for PhDs and people with that niche skill sets. But I think overall, um, education sector has responded quite well to the needs of industry.
And it's really nice to hear that, there is a focus on upskilling existing employees. Is that a focus for employers at the moment, or, trying to provide succession paths for people?
I think it is, but I think in certain cases where we've seen it work really well is that people have taken the opportunity to go and reskill themselves, and they've taken the initiative rather than wait for somebody to provide it for them. And that's where we've seen some really good examples of people that have maybe been in a more traditional manufacturing sector, and they've decided to go do a course through NIBRT, and that has opened up an opportunity to get into a life science, medical device or pharmaceutical company. That's where I've seen some of the best examples of where people have reskilled and put themselves on a completely different career path.
That's really interesting. And we see that in HU, like we've got thousands of students coming back to do further education, moving away from maybe their traditional workforce career to do something different. And that's a real positive as well. So I suppose the big topic, and the topic that the PhD student that you're supporting, Niall, is the topic of remote and hybrid working. So do you think it's here to stay?
I do. I certainly do think hybrid and remote is here to stay. I think there's definitions between hybrid and remote, and I think my own personal opinion is that hybrid was kind of foisted on us back in 2020 with COVID and the pandemic, and I think we are probably 5 years, halfway through a 10-year, the biggest social experiment of work ever, and I think that's really where it's at. In the past 12, 18 months, we've seen numerous big companies come out with diktats bringing people back to the office 5 days a week, 4 days a week. We've seen, I think, Bank of Ireland, AIB in the last week come out. It's here to stay. It's what it actually will settle and look like. So is it 4 days a week? Is it 2 days a week? Is it 3 days a week? Is it a day a month? I think that's really what's up for debate. It's definitely here to stay. It's what the balance is. And more importantly, when people are in the office, what's the purpose of the days that they're in the office? And I think that's the thing that still companies are grappling with, and having people in an office as a token, if they're not with their colleagues, if there's not purpose to it, I think is a waste of time. So I think that's really where the debate is going to start to move to, rather than focusing on is it 3 days, 4 days, 1 day. I think it's what's the purpose of when you're in the office.
And that's really interesting as well, because, what is the purpose of asking people to come back? Because the evidence would suggest it works, and it works quite well in terms of productivity. I know a lot of the work on productivity has been done overseas, but it's really interesting to see what is the purpose of inviting people back to the office. And I suppose, why do you think, from your experience, employers are asking people to come back to the office?
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount, if you look at the collaboration piece, and that's often bandied about, but it's there's no doubt about it, and we've seen it ourselves when we have some complex technical things to work through, be it systems things. It's far easier, it's far more productive to do that in person. And I think if you're working in a very technical role, there's a significant benefit to having people sitting around a table thrashing out a problem or a complex problem. We've seen quite a few companies look at their graduates, and they would feel that their graduates aren't as productive or aren't getting the same skills or training or even socialization in terms of coming into the workforce if they're working remotely. I've actually had a couple of people, graduates with kind of 12, 18 months experience have come to me looking for just some advice because they're struggling in a remote role and they want to get back into an office. So I think the graduate piece, I think it would be pretty clear, in my opinion anyway, graduates will do better if they have a more structured certain number of days, be it 3 or 4 in an office. I think that's it. That would certainly is what we're seeing.
And it's that, how we learned our craft, that buddying up, sitting beside, uh, Mary and learning how to do the job on the job. They're missing out on that, the graduates really, aren't they?
Hugely. And even just the socialization of coming into an office and interacting with people and getting on with colleagues. And, clearly you're going to learn and train sitting beside people, but even just the interactions of being part of a team, I think that's hugely important for a graduate. And, that learning by osmosis, just sitting by, even, the lunchtime canteen, all that stuff that people miss out on if they don't. And also, it's far more social to be in an office if there are peers of your own age group. I certainly wouldn't like to be 24 again, starting out as a graduate working from home. I think it's far better in an office.
Yeah, and I started my career in an office, and there were great times and great memories. So it's a very different environment for the next generation of graduates. So, what do you think the biggest challenge that the recruitment sector, the recruitment industry, is facing right now?
Well, if you look at the recruitment industry in Ireland, and if you take our business, they certainly, the news that's coming out from Scotland with the 15%, I think clarity on tariffs is very, very important. I think some of the multinationals have been that little bit quieter, and that uncertainty doesn't help. So I think that's important. And we'd certainly like to see that, just whatever the tariffs are, let's move on. I'm not sure if there's any word of carve-outs around pharmaceuticals or life science or semiconductors or food and drink, but certainly I think that's an important part. I think the detail, I'm sure, will come out in the coming days. After that, in our industry, you can't really turn in our industry without hearing more about AI and automation and everything that's coming our way. So we're working our way through that, really trying to understand. I'd say 3 or 4 times a week I get another offer with another AI product that's going to change our lives and everything else. That is really what we're trying to do, is understand what products and what tools will help us be better at the job, will take away some of the admin tasks to allow us to focus on some of the more value add, time that you spend with clients or candidates. And it's really trying to figure out that and just navigate through, if I can see something that saves me time and makes me better at what we do, brilliant. But some of them are products are probably just a little bit of noise and just...
Yeah. And I remember you and I having this conversation probably last year as well, because there's so much talk about it and so much hype about it, and the implications it may have on the labour market, taking those low value, high volume jobs out of the pipeline. Has there been any indication in terms of recruitment, or is it still early days yet?
It's still early days. We haven't seen any. We've certainly read plenty about it, and there's plenty of estimations that'll be by 2030 there'll be X number of roles gone, but we haven't. It's hard to see where there's any hard evidence of it just yet. But look, there's no doubt about it is coming. I mean, some of the tasks that you can do with a very basic ChatGPT now is incredible. So we have to think it certainly will impact.
Yeah, and I think the functionality is just going to get better and better. So now, you've been a huge supporter of ATU, as I've mentioned, but in terms of programs like TU Rise and the Ideas PhD program, which you're supporting one of our students, why do you think the importance of these type of PhD programs to our region and ATU? What do you think the value of them are, and what do you think they add to somebody like yourself who's engaging with industry partners and to the region in general?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, I think it's brilliant that ATU is developing as a university. That's the first thing to say. And I think any PhD programs that can be coming as part of that, I think it adds to it. So where we saw the opportunity was to do some really deep research on a niche topic. We thought that was fantastic. And if that can be replicated across all different industries, I think that's a really, really positive development for the region and very, very positive development for ATU. So like I said, this is in terms of the PhD on remote work and hybrid. I honestly believe, like I said, this is kind of halfway through a 10-year social experiment. So it'd be really interesting to see and just to understand, in a region location, is there an advantage, or is there anything that we can work on as a competitive advantage for the region around remote or hybrid working?
Yeah. And when we hear lots of people moving back to the area, this is really important to provide people opportunities. So I suppose my final question today is, what's next for Collins McNicholas in the next 2 to 5 years? How do you see yourselves evolving?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're always looking to see how we can evolve and change. It's one of our key organizational goals, is to look at how we can improve our processes. So there's a number of different things we're working on. We just recently launched a green team, which is focusing on green recruitment. So focusing on things like sustainability, environmental, solar, and that's really exciting. There's lots of really good initiatives going on within that. We see that as a big growth area. And again, I can have a big opportunity in Ireland to, maybe take advantage of some of the wind energy. So we have a team that's going to be dedicated to sourcing talent for those emerging sectors. So we're really excited about that. We also have another arm to our recruitment is our core business, but we have a team of occupational psychologists, our people consulting team, and they're very, very busy on a number of different areas, including things like assessments. They run a culture audit, engagement surveys, and they're very busy in that space, and also outplacement. So it's a kind of a slightly different offering to our core recruitment division and recruitment offering, but they're very, very busy. So we'd like to see that grow and expand as well. Other than that, it's really, from our point of view, is trying to, I suppose, keep a focus on innovation, keep a focus on, using the technology that we can in terms of adapting to AI and automation, and trying to make sure we are focusing on the key activities around candidates and clients and trying to automate and improve processes where possible.
A continuous improvement mindset. And I really just hear you're looking at a new avenue, the green. So in terms of talent for that, how are you finding, I know it's at early days yet, do we have a lot of the talent available that might be able to service that kind of market? Because as you say, it's going to keep growing and growing.
Yeah, it's a challenge, identify some of the talent. But again, a certain amount of it is, if you take some of the wind energy and solar, can we retrain electricians? Can we retrain people that have a good technical background to work in that space? And I think the answer is yes, we can. So, the environmental area is a growth area. Again, we have quite a strong, science graduate output. So I think some of those people can get retrained into that space. So I think it might be about adapting and tweaking courses from an educational point of view rather than completely starting from scratch. So I think we have a lot of the core skills. It's a matter of where people can adapt and can retrain as well.
Well, Niall, thank you so much. Lots of food for thought there. And thank you as always for joining us today. You've provided an excellent insight to the recruitment and landscape and what potentially it look like in the future, but also the importance of programmes like TU Rise to ATU and to our region. I want to thank Chandler Tyrrell in production, Celeste post-production, and Jordan McMenamin social media and distribution. I want to thank you for listening. And on our next podcast, we'll be discussing the health outcomes of socially excluded older people in the age of digitalisation with Chandler Tyrrell, who's investigating this as part of his PhD. Until we meet again, slán.